Recording going. What is up, wide worlds? Welcome to everyone here in the room. I know I've been chatting with you already. Welcome to anyone who's watching this on YouTube. It's a pleasure to have you. This is a part of a longer series that I've been putting together for the last couple of months regarding integrated reasoning / the new will be soon to be data insight section of the GMAT focus. And so we are now on part 4 of 5. No, or is that true? 5 of, I don't know. We might be on part 5 tonight. We've done quite a few. I can't remember now. I'm losing track. But we're focusing in on how data shows up on the GMAT, both on the classic GMAT edition, as well as the focus that we are currently anticipating at any moment. We know it's coming out this fall. It's not quite September yet. We're floating around here on August 20th, 2023. On a very hot day in Durham, North Carolina. But my name is Whitney, or Whit. I'm a GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment instructor here at Manhattan Prep, where I've actually been since 2010. Crazy town. I am excited for tonight's workshop. So let me go ahead and open up our screen. It's being a little weird, but hopefully it's working okay. So we are working on data and data insights. Tonight, we are focusing on the MSR family of questions, the multi-source reasoning questions. We have already been through 2 sessions of graphics interpretation, how to read more traditional, as well as some like weirder graphs. We've done 2-part analysis questions. We've done table analysis questions. That was our last one. And this go round, we are doing multi-source reasoning. So current edition, the GMAT Classic, has the 4 integrated reasoning question types as part of the integrated reasoning section. So graphs, 2 parts, tables, and MSR. The new GMAT focus, as soon as it comes out, will have the data insights section that incorporates all 4 of the integrated reasoning question types, but then we'll also include data sufficiency. So we'll be doing a data sufficiency specific lesson for this series as soon as more keeps coming out. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be the next one. Yeah. And so we've got tonight on the docket, multi-source reasoning. If you are looking for any of our earlier in the series, any of the ones that I've done, you can find those recordings on our YouTube playlist. For those of you that are in the room right now, I know that those are all about to go up in the next about 7 or 8 days. So they should all be there very, very soon. It'll take a little bit longer for this one, but we have a ton of updates happening at Manhattan Prep right now. Lots of new classes being rolled out for the new GMAT focus. So we've got a lot of stuff, new books, new all kinds of things. So because of that, we're a little bit behind on getting our videos uploaded to YouTube. But if you're seeing this one on YouTube, all of the other ones should be a little lower on the free prep hour playlist below. Yeah. Okay. So in order for us to talk about the MSR section, MSR is one of the question types that requires you to be able to click on stuff. And so in order to be able to do that, I'm going to lead you to some of the official source materials. So for those of you that are following along on the YouTube, I will make sure and get you that link. It'll be in the comments or in the description below. For those of you here in the room, I will get you a link here in just a moment as soon as we start to work on these questions. But for now, just note that when you are working on the data insights or integrated reasoning section of the test, you do have access to an on-screen calculator. When you click on it, this is what you'll see. You'll notice that there's not a lot of functionality. There's no, I mean, you can take a square root, you can plug something in as a percentage, or you can take the inverse of something. But for the most part, this is just a simple, plug and chug calculator. I'm going to strongly encourage you to not use calculators on your phone because having your fingers pressing on buttons is actually quite different than having to use a mouse or a trackpad to click on the screen. So as you're practicing and trying some of these sample questions, I'm going to encourage you to use the sample on-screen calculator that comes with it. If you're working on IR questions where you are not working within a system where you have the on-screen calculator, then you might want to look for your system's on-screen calculator. I know Mac's got one. I'm sure PC does too. So you'll have a very simplistic calculator, certainly not an exciting one, right? And so just keep that in mind. So when it comes to the world of MSR, MSR will look, and I will give y'all an example in just a second. But an example of an MSR would be something like the following. So you'll have on the left the prompt or the given information. All of our data insights questions have prompts. So you'll have the prompt on the left and the question on the right. Now, MSR is going to be a little bit like the reading comp version of this world of integrated reasoning and data, because you'll have one prompt, but then you'll have 3 typically questions about that one prompt. Now, of the prompts that you'll see, tables, 2-part, graphs, and MSR, we've seen these before. The graphs and the 2 parts are static. So it's just like a single screen, single question. Tables only come with one question, but you'll be able to sort the table. So that one you'll be able to kind of engage with. MSR is also one that you'll be able to kind of click on, because MSR will come with 2 or 3 tabs of information. And so those tabs will come across the top. You'll be able to click on any one of the tabs and move from one bit of information to the next. Key is that you won't be able to have the information from all 3 tabs at one time. And then you'll be able to click through the 3 tabs. So we'll see an example as we kind of move through the ones on the site together. This will be the first one we work on. But you can click on the tabs. It will be important to take a moment and jot down a few notes for yourself about each tab, just so that you understand what's there before you get going on the questions themselves. So we want to spend a little bit of time. We did this with the table. We did this with the graphs. We did this with the 2 parts. We want to spend a little bit of time with this prompt, making sure that we understand what information is provided and where it all is before we move into our questions. Now, something that's a little strange about the 2 prompts that we're doing tonight, just because these are the examples that are on the MBA.com website, is that these are entirely text-based. Now, they are still quantitative, somewhat quantitative in nature, but they are entirely text-based. It is also completely possible that your MSR tabs have tables or like maybe pie charts or graphs on them included with textual information. So just note that these tabs, they may be 2 tabs or 3 tabs, aren't always going to be purely text that you have to read. There very likely can be some table information or some graphical information of sorts, some images on them as well. If there is a table buried inside of an MSR, you will not be able to click on it. You wouldn't need to click on it. It'll usually be quite small, but just know that you wouldn't be able to click on that. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, right, is when we get an integrated reasoning. So the way you're going to find this, I'll put the link up in just a second. But one of the easiest ways to find this, if you're kind of looking for more practice integrated reasoning questions, you can just type GMAT integrated reasoning. And you're looking for the MBA.com site. So we're looking for the official source information. And there's a lot of places here where you can find practice questions to work on, right? Lots of other sources. But we're going to start with just the main intro. Hey, MBA.com, tell me more about integrated reasoning. Once we come to this page, you'll absolutely be able to find, prep materials and things that you need. But for right now, we're going to be working within the free practice questions that are listed on the site. You'll see under this header that you'll have MSR, multi-source reasoning. Well, that's where we're going to go to see our sample questions. but you can also see the table analysis questions that we used in our last video. And we've got the graphics as well as two-part problems here as well. So you'll find them just by clicking on the samples. So we're going to move into our MSR sample questions. And so I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat window here. It'll also be in the link. That main page will be in the comments, or rather in the description for the video below. And so what you might note is that as the question stays on the screen, you'll be able to click between or among the emails themselves. And then as you click next, we'll be looking just at two questions. We're going to look at the first two questions for this first set of emails. So we're actually going to start on the first one. Now, the way MSR goes, we're going to move through these tabs together. But if you'd like to be able to click through the tabs while we kind of sort through them on our own, you're more than welcome to do so. So we're going to start by just trying to interpret the prompt a little bit, and then I'm going to send you in to work on the questions on your own. So let's start with the first tab. Now, generally speaking, I will make a note to myself that sort of has like a 1, 2, and a 3, since I've got 3 tabs. Notice they're not terribly far apart. I'm not going to write very much down. I'm just encouraging myself to take a moment, right, and maybe jot down something from each tab, just so that it's something I can see. So we've got all 3 tabs appear to be emails. I might do a quick click on each of the 3 just to see, yep, it's an email, it's another email. They're all sort of time-stamped and dated. The second one is quite a bit longer. But this would seem to be some sort of email back and forth, or, you know, maybe an email chain. We shall see. And so this one is admin to research staff. I don't need to write a whole lot down. Cool. This is when it's sent. Take a moment, give this a read for yourself, and then we'll talk about what we need to summarize. Okay, you might need to read it a couple of times, but it would seem that our admin is checking in on a survey that was meant to have ended yesterday. And so there was a deadline. We invited some doctors to participate in some survey, and we're asking the question of, are we going to get reliable results based on number, right? So is the number reliable? And I might make the note, do we need more? Nothing too terribly exciting, right? I'm not trying to put anything fancy down. Okay, so now we'll click ahead and see what the second one is. And you might catch yourself sort of clicking back and forth a little bit. So in this one, we have an email from the project coordinator in response to the admin. So we've got, you know, coordinator back to the admin. Okay, so it seems like this is a back and forth. So let's give this one a read and see what we want to know, what we want to jot down about this page. Now, if you started to write down a bunch of these numeric details, I'm going to strongly encourage you not to. The key in this first pass is to read the information and just kind of track what is where. I don't need to track all of the information. I just need to know where to go if I'm ever asked about any of this. So this is about how many. So this is definitely about the numbers and maybe need more, right? We might need more. And there's something about payment. And maybe I could make that one word so it's easier to read. There's something about payment and budget. Great. Okay, so we're still kind of moving right along. We've got our notes going. So let's take a look then at our third tab and see what happens with this one. So we've got some instruction again. This is the admin back to the coordinator. Okay, so we've got admin to coordinator. Notice I am not mad that I limited my space because I really want to keep what I jot down minimal. I'm just trying to orient myself to the prompt. Okay, so our last tab is about, it's admin back to coordinator, and this is a confirmation on the budget. And we really want to try not to exceed. And he agreed on that same payment again. It seems like that $50, I'm going to check to make sure. But yes, it's the same $50 payment promised. So it sounds like there wasn't any kind of like arguing back with the price or what we're willing to pay. Yep. Okay. So now what we're left to do is say, all right, I've got a picture of what's going on. We've got a back and forth between the admin and the staff who happens to be the coordinator. And so our admin wants to know, do we get enough people? Coordinator's like, no, here's how much we're going to pay. What should we do? And then the admin's like, here's our total budget. We want to try really hard not to overdo that budget. Yeah. So our job now is to work on the questions that accompany this problem. Now, when it comes to the questions that accompany MSR, there will be two types of questions. And generally speaking, you will pre-know the mix of them. So you'll end up with these either ors. We already saw these. These show up in our tables problem. So if you've already done the tables lesson, you know how these work. But the way the either or work, this might be true, false, yes, no, must be true, or not. There's like all types of headings, but essentially this is a 3-part single question. So this single thing on the screen will count as one question for MSR. You'll have the whole prompt, and then you'll have a 3-part either or. You have to answer all 3 parts correctly to get the credit for this problem. There is no partial credit. So you have to answer the first, second, and third statement all correctly in order to be able to get your full credit or to be able to get credit at all. Generally, for an MSR prompt, you'll have 2 of these. So there'll be 2 3-part questions. You'll then have 1 more standard multiple choice. with a standard 5 answer choices that works just like any of our other multiple choice questions that we're accustomed to encountering. Now, just as a heads up, the practice questions on the MBA.com website for this first 3 tab that we're going to be working on, there's only 2 questions. There's one either or, and there's one multiple choice. The other 5 questions are all for the second prompt that we'll look at here in a little bit. And there's a bunch of like multiple or a bunch of the 3-part ones. So we're only going to do a couple of those. So there'll be some more that you can go and try after we're done with this lesson. You can go try a couple of the other ones on your own. So we're going to start with the weirder one. We're going to start with the either or. Now, again, you have to get all 3 parts of it right in order to be able to get the credit for the question. And so what you'll want to do is, generally speaking, the amount of time that we'll spend per question is about 3 minutes. So that's our goal. We're going to do that by trying to skip a question here and there so that we have more time. Now, for MSR, if we're going to see 3 questions, that means that we're going to spend about 9 minutes on the entire set. Now, we need to spend some of that time doing what we just did, which is making sense of the tabs, reading them, particularly if they're more dense than what these ones currently are. And the next one we do will be more dense. So just know that with these, you've got 9 minutes roughly for the full set. However, right, you need to spend, I would say, 2-ish minutes on each of the questions or on each of the tabs. So 2 minutes for the whole tabbed prompt piece, and maybe even 3. So what we're looking at is, once we get into the individual questions themselves, we really don't have much more than about 2 minutes per question to answer the full 3-part or the multiple choice. Multiple choice might be a little faster because you don't have as many parts. So you might be looking more like 1.5 minutes for the multiple choice, 2.5 for the 2 3-parters, and about 2.5 to read. So this is the page for the 3-part. Again, it's in the comments below. So that way you can click on the tabs. I'm going to put a timer up. We'll spend about 2 minutes, and then we'll talk about it. For those of you in the room, by all means, please send me your answer. Yes, no. So you might say like, yes, 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 or N, 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 or Y, N, Y. Just kind of send them to me all together. All right, so let's take just another couple of seconds and submit your answer to me privately if you have not yet. Okay, awesome. Awesome. All right, so let me get our stopwatch out of the way. Beautiful. All right, so let's start to work on these. It says, consider each of the following. Does the information in the 3 emails support the inference? So anywhere we see the word inference on the GMAT, we want to think conclusion. And this is like a legal conclusion. I have to be able to sort of prove this, right, by given just what the information that was given to me. Okay, so the first question says the administrator is unwilling to invite as many participants in the second group as were invited in the first group. Okay, well, let's do a little bit of research. Let's see if we can figure out, right? We, according to the coordinator, we got exactly 350 survey completions in the first group. And we need 700 more, or we need 700 total. So we need another 350. Now, the results from this group and some other research indicates that with this type of survey and this type of participants, there's about a 40% probability. So that would imply that we had about a 40% probability on this first batch. So let's look, right? Let's say if we had 40% of the first batch, I'm just going to use a word here, is equal to 350. We'll use the calculator, our little on-screen calculator. That 40% is the same as 0.4. We'll take 350, we'll divide it by 0.4. That means that we likely invited 875 people. All right, so the first batch was somewhere in the neighborhood of, 875-ish, whatever, 900. Now it says, obviously, that doesn't mean that if we invited 1,000, we'd get the 400, and we need another 350. So this project coordinator would actually like to invite even more. What we need to look at is our budget. So a $50 payment we've already made to these 350 people. So let's see how much money we've spent. So it's only for the people who submitted their surveys. So the 350 times the $50, we've spent $17,500. And our budget was on the last page. We actually have a $45,000 budget for compensation. And we've only spent about 17,000, 18,000. So we have a little less than 30,000. So if we invited twice as many people, or sorry, if we invited twice as many people and had 700 actually respond. So if we invited 700 and all 700 magically responded, that would kind of crush our budget. But the administrator made a couple of notes. One, we're probably only trying to get another 350 to 400. So we have more than enough budget for that. And even if we invited a whole nother 800 or 900 and almost all of them replied, the administrator said, let's try not to exceed. It didn't say absolutely unwilling to exceed. So the administrator doesn't have any issues with how many people we invite, as long as we are trying not to exceed our budget. And we really only need another 350 people. And so if we invite the 1,000 that our admin is, or our coordinator is considering, and we get that 40% back, we'd still be well within our budget. And so this, as many of you said, would give us a no answer to the question. So the first one is absolutely no. Our admin isn't unwilling. Our admin would absolutely consider. Okay, if we look at the second question, the project coordinator does not expect to be able to meet the goal for the number of completed surveys received. Well, if we look at our project coordinator, their email is only the second email. And they say that, obviously this doesn't mean that if we invited 1,000, so we need to think in terms of the risk of getting too few returns or exceeding the budget. But it doesn't sound like anywhere that our project coordinator sounds like we can't do it, just that we need to invite a whole lot of people to make it happen. And so, as many of you said, this second one, there's no evidence here to support a project coordinator thinking that this isn't going to work. It's more this nuanced, do we care about the number of people replying versus how much are we willing to go over the budget? The last one, it says the administrator is willing to accept some risk of exceeding the budget for compensating participants. It would appear that there is evidence for at least an administrator willing to accept some risk, because he doesn't say, or they don't say, we will need to not exceed the total amount budgeted, just that we will need to try not to exceed. And so, in fact, there is evidence for this is willing to accept some risk. So note, most everybody in the room gave me all three no's, but there is, in fact, evidence that this administrator would be okay with there being some excess of the budget, just making an attempt to try and avoid it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's try the second of these questions. Yeah, it's because that try doesn't mean do not exactly. Yeah, nope. It's not a wrong approach to not have done any math. I will say I would just check to make sure that it's even remotely feasible. If we were going to blow out the budget by 3, 4, 5 times, that would probably be a problem. But given that everything seems to be okay with coming in under the budget, I would at least sort of check. But yeah, for some of these, there's not going to be actual math to be done. In fact, we'll see that there's very little math sometimes. All right, if we go to the next one, so if you're following along on the website, you'll move to item or question number 2 in that set of practice problems, the multiple choice. So again, we're going to look to try and spend 1.5 to 2 minutes so that we have a little bit more time for those 3 parts. And so here you go. I'll put a timer on the board for you, but you might want to be clicking along on the main sample pages. All right. I love it. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, see where our evidence for this is going to come from. We'll get it up on board. So suppose that the total number of invitees in the second group is 560. And if all the information in all three of these emails is accurate, so we know there was a thing about 40% and whatever, the probability that the budget for compensating participants will be exceeded is what? Well, hold on. We know, right, that the budget is 45,000 and that we've only spent, right? So if we look through our list, our budget was 45,000. And if you did the math before, we likely had 350 people out of the original whatever, but our 350 people cost us 50 each. Right. So if we grab our little calculator, our 350 at $50 each was $1,750. So again, if you didn't do this math from before, $17,500. And we know that our budget is, so $17,500 minus 45,000 is 27,500. So that means a remainder of 27,500. I just need to know what are these 560 at 50 if they actually, oh, I'm sorry, this is the invitees. So if we invite 560 and we only get 40 of them, 40% of them, 224 at $50 is only 11,000. We have more than enough. And so what is the probability that we're going to exceed our budget? It's 0. We're not going to exceed our budget. So we have more than enough money, even if we get, if we get the full 40% of that. Even if we got more, we could double check just to make sure. If we got all 560 responded, we would be just over. But the fact is they said that there's no way, right? Like that's rare. So it would be hard to believe that there was a full 100% of those 560. And so our correct answer is, in fact, 0. It's definitely not a 20% chance. It's an almost 0% chance. Beautiful. All right. We are going to look now at the last a question with one of its altogether. So I'm going to give you a little time to actually move through the tabs for this one on your own. So I want you to take some notes. And yes, remembering that you have a calculator for this data insights in the integrated reasoning section is massively important. Massively important. So we're actually going to start with question number 3. This is a new one that's got a techniques, artifacts, and budget tab. So I want to give you a little bit of time to click through those, right? It looks like they're all text. Sometimes I just kind of click around and see what they are first. And then I'll go back and make a little brief note for each one. So we'll go ahead and review the 3 tabs. And I'll leave another couple minutes on the clock for you to try the first of the problems. So that means we'll look at about, I'd say 4 to 5 minutes to review the 3 tabs and to try this first problem. I'll put the timer up on the board. So that's about halfway through your time. So you'll want to have, for the most part, made it through all 3 tabs and sort of evaluate it so that now you can start to work on the questions. All right, as you think you might have answers for that first question, this is question number 3. You'll send them to me as yes, 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 no, 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 yes, no, yes, whatever. It'll take about 30 more seconds. And then let's talk about how to evaluate. Nice. Okay, so let's start with a quick understanding of what is where. Our first tab, we might look at all 3 tabs to see what they're titled. We've got techniques, artifacts, budget. Techniques tells us all about the 4 different types of techniques that this museum is using in order to identify various aspects of classic antiques or artifacts that they find. So we've got things made of animal teeth or bone, metallic things like ores and alloys, plant matter, and fired clay objects. Animal teeth or bone, we can try and determine what the animal ate or what minerals were in its water supply. For metallic ores, we can tell where that sample might have been obtained, like where did those metallic ores or alloys come from. For plant matter and for fired clay objects, it's not about the what was in it or where it was obtained, but for plant matter and fired clay objects, it's how old it is. We've got carbon dating, radiocarbon dating for a plant's date of death. So how old that tree or whatever was when it was cut down. And then for fired clay objects, how long since it was actually fired. So we know roughly the age at which either that tree presumably was cut down or how long ago that fired clay object was actually fired. And the second tab on artifacts also talks a little bit about how they've got a map of all the mines and sources for clay. And so we can maybe find the locations of these clay sources, as well as knowing that wooden artifacts were generally created within a short enough window after, let's say, the tree was cut down. So that adds more to our understanding of how old things are. And we know what the date range is for those two aging techniques, the radiocarbon and the TL. I'd go back just to check. Yep, thermoluminescence, TL. Great. So it's just kind of windows of tolerance and accuracy around our two time stamp sort of techniques. And then we talk about a budget and what it costs to do any mix or number of tests for a specific thing. So we can get $7,000 for our budget. That budget includes unlimited, whatever those IRMS. I might click back on techniques. IRMS was the teeth and bones one. We've got some TL and radiocarbon tests that we can do. And this cost of, I think I missed the number, $40 ICMS tests for all other things. And then anything we do outside the lab, the museum is charged some fixed price. So anything that we don't do in-house, we don't know what it's going to cost us. So let's take a look at the first of the questions that went with this sample set. And so for each of the following artifacts, select yes if, based on our assumptions, we can come up with a range of dates for when the object was created using one of our techniques. Well, we know that the range of dates is only going to happen for our fired clay and our plant matter. So anything that's done with plant or fire, we're good. Anything else, not so good. And so bronze things, I can tell you where that came from, right? Where the sample was obtained. So I won't be able to tell you anything for bronze, but for something that's fire clay or for wooden, I can tell you. So note that spending a little time up front, making sure to familiarize yourself with the prompt, as well as like finding the evidence for where that's going to come from, can save you a ton of time on the question itself. The next question we're going to do, we're going to kind of skip ahead because I want to do the multiple choice that goes with this one. And so in the document or in the free samples, they give us lots of 3 parts, but we're actually going to go all the way to question number 7. So if you click ahead to question number 7, we're going to do the multiple choice. So let's take about a minute and a half for this multiple choice, and then we'll round out with one more 3-part. All right, starting to get some answers in. All right, so let's get our second one up. Reset our clock. So among the artifacts that were found is this wood box. And it's got it's a wooden box. It has a small fired clay bead, and it's got some sediment in it that's got clay and plant matter. So we're living down in this universe of plant and clay. Well, we already know that plant and clay, we can tell you when something was made, right? We also know, though, that for clay things, according to the second tab, we have mapped out all of the mines, quarries, and sources of clay on Kana. So there is something about location, potentially, that we'd also know about clay. So it says, based on this assumption, which one of the following details about the bead can be determined by applying one of the tests in the manner described. So I know that we can get at a range of dates. There was something about its location, right? We saw that there was some like mapping of mines, quarries, and sources. Definitely don't know what the vegetation patterns would have been nearby, so we can kind of toss C out. We don't know the range of dates for it being put in the box. I might be able to tell you when it was made and when the box was made, but I couldn't necessarily tell you when it actually got put in the box. And then the source of clay, well, we do know the sources of clay. So I got a lot of people that picked A. How are you able to pick A and not one of the location sort of source map pieces? How are we able to eliminate B and E? Because y'all are exactly right. The correct answer is A here. What do we use to eliminate B and E? Even if we have a map of our sources of clay, how do we eliminate this part? Nice, y'all. So there's this sentence here on this artifacts tab that says, there is, however, considerable uncertainty as to whether they were actually created on Kana. These could have come from elsewhere. And so because there is considerable uncertainty, then it would only make sense that we follow the range of dates that we know we can do for anything clay. Nice, y'all. Very nice. All right. So we're going to do the third question for this one. And the one we'll do is, one second, let me pull it up for you. We'll do, maybe the right one. We'll do, ooh, I lost it. 3, number 6. So just back up 1. We'll look at question number 6. Get a little bit of a different attack. And again, we're going to shoot for about 2 minutes. All right. So let's first recognize that this question is about cost. And they're asking if the cost of all pertinent or applicable techniques can be within the museum's first year budget. So it's definitely on the budget tab, but the technique tab tells me which techniques get used with which type of material. So I should come over to this one first, and I'm going to make some quick notes to myself. So animal, so let's call this teeth bone. So on my paper, I'd kind of scribble teeth bone is going to be IRMS. And then I've got metal. That's going to be ICP. Plant is going to be carbon. And fire clay is going to be TL. Okay, so I've got all these. And now let's head over to our budget tab and take a look at what we need. So for this first one, our budget, we get unlimited IRMS. So any teeth or bone, that's unlimited. Actually, I'll just finish typing. That was easier, right? So IRMS, free, right? For metal, let's see, ICP is 40 equals $7,000. So we can only do 40 of those. 4 TL plus 15 radiocarbon. I don't really know the prices for those, but the 7,000 would be 4 TL plus 15 RC, the carbon ones. Okay, so let's start with anything that's got bone. So anything with bone is free. That part's free. So I need 5 fired clay cups. So fired clay TL. Ooh, if I want 5 of those and I need all 5 of them decorated with gold, I don't know how much the TL costs. It might be the really, really expensive part. So I can't prove, right? I can't go after those 5 fire clay cups because that's the TLs and I'm only allowed 4 of those. All right, with wooden statues, I'm allowed up to 15 of the radiocarbon, which would work. I can do that. And I'm allowed 20 metal implements. So I'm using half of this plus only half of this one, which means I should be able to, yes, cover this. I should be able to cover this one. And then if I need 15 wooden, that's the carbon, the bone part's free, yes. So the fact is as long as I'm coming in underneath what they said I could afford, then I should be okay. I'm coming in under what they said I could afford. And so the correct answer for this one is no, yes, yes. Okay, so once again, thanks so much for hanging out for our MSR. We'll be talking about data sufficiency and particularly how that's going to show up in the new data insights section. So we'll be looking at some samples for those. In the meantime, come and hang out with us. If you found this recording on our YouTube channel, then by all means, come hang out, right? Watch lots. We've got several other playlists on our free prep hour playlist. And I'll put the link in the chat window for those of you here in the room. Also, any of our full-length classes, you can always attend the first session for free. And so the first session, right, you can go to our manhattanprep.com/GMAT, /classes, and then /free, right? And come and take any of those session ones. We have some new focus classes just starting. So for those of you interested in studying for the GMAT focus, that's certainly going to be for folks who are looking at taking this test after round 2. So a lot of schools are not accepting focus for round 2. It may not even be out really with that much time in advance. But if you're looking at round 3, or if you're looking at applying sometime in 2024 for a start date in 2025, then by all means, you might want to check out one of our focus classes. But otherwise, come and check out. We have tons of other free workshops. You can always attend these free prep hours for free live, so you can ask questions live, or you can attend things like our Foundations of Math workshops and so on. So we got lots of stuff available for you. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. It was amazing to get to be with you, and I will see you next month for our final installment on the data insight section with data sufficiency. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great rest of your afternoon or evening or morning or whatever time it is where you are. Wishing you the very best of luck with your studies, and hopefully we'll see you around soon.